Hello guys, welcome to a new video on ToG New World, and in this video we're finally going to see how Pierce actually works. So in one of my previous videos I said that it's difficult to test the stats coming from the ignition weapons, and that's because we don't have them in arena simulation, so we cannot really isolate them. That's what I thought, and I would say that in most cases that's true, but I found a way here in friendly matches to do just that, to isolate certain stats I want to look for. Like in this case, I used my Oakin here without the attack piece because I had a Pierce roll there, and without obviously the slot 5 at the moment to record the first hit. And as you can see, I have 0% physical Pierce, which is perfect for what we want to test. And then we're going to test it against different opponents with different resistances. So the first one I picked is this guy here, Evan, because he has 0% resistance. That's perfect. Then the second one will be Hats, because he has 15% resistance, as we can see. And then I also found another one with more resistances than my peers. So to do that, we're just going to run enter battle and hope we do not crit, because we need to record only non-crits hit, and I have quite a high number of crit rate already, so I don't know, it's going to be difficult, but let's try it. Let's see. And here I already have formulas that I will explain after we input the first data. 76, 73, if I saw correctly, I think so. 76, 73. So as we can see here, okay, yeah, true, but I had to add 3 zeros, we are missing the K. Okay, here the E column is just going to be the damage you would deal if the opponent had 0% resistance. Okay, fine. And in this case is this number here is the same because the enemy already has no resistances. Kind of makes sense. Here is the expected damage if Pierce is just a plain increase in damage by 33.6%, which, looking at the description they have in their forum, might be. They just say Pierce increases damage dealt. You're like, okay, sure. But now we're going to see how it actually works. So here we're getting just the additional crit rate. Let me show again the piece. We do not have additional attack or other things that could change the actual damage. We just have crit rate, so we might have to retry a few more times if we hit too many crits, but that's hopefully not going to be an issue. But the damage will just take into account the Pierce portion of it. And that's a crit, so we have to check it again. And let's see how much damage we deal here. 10, 251. Okay, 10, 251. Okay, perfect. So we see that the actual damage increase is a 33.6%. So that was what we were expecting, simply. Just the enemy had no resistances, so it could have either been no increase at all if the Pierce was like decrease the resistances but cannot go below 0. So that would have resulted in a no increase in damage. In this case, we still got it, and it was a 33.6%. Now, is it 33.6% because that's what the Pierce does? Or is it because I was at 0% resistances, like the enemy was at 0% resistances, and went down to minus 33.6? We do not know, we have to test it. So let's try against Hats that we already saw. He has 15% physical resistance. Let's see how much the standard hit is, and then we're going to see the other damage. Okay, that's a crit. That's a bit unfortunate. Let's try again. We'll see. Again, the expected damage is just a 33.6% increase. The damage no resistances will be hopefully the same because they have really similar amount of yeah, again, crit, of defense. It will be different with Karaka because that guy is higher level and has a lot of resistances, but these two are on similar slots, and my Joaquin has so much attack that it doesn't really matter that small difference in defense. So it should basically be the same. 65-22. Okay, again, 65-22. Okay. Here we see that the damage is exactly the same here without resistances, and we are expecting to deal 8,713,000 of damage if we are just increasing the damage by 33% again. So let's see how it actually works. Let's add back the Pierce piece and see what happens. $91,000. Okay. And here we notice that the damage is actually higher, so it's not a simple increase in damage, it's doing something else. And the damage resulted here is actually a 40% increase. So the more resistances the enemy has, the more valuable that Pierce is. So it's definitely related to resistances. Let's have a look at the damage against Karaka, and then I will show the hidden column I have here in this file. So let's find the same friend that I tested it on. Okay, this guy. It was a Chinese name, that's why there was no name there. So let's test it, and let's show his Karaka. He has 37.25% of physical resistance. Perfect. So let's move it there, remove this piece, and get the base damage. So let's see. 1670. Again, K. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the damage we would deal if he had no resistances would be 2,660,000. The expected damage that we already know is wrong from the previous test would have been 2,230,000. Let's see how much damage we're actually going to deal and what the damage increase look like. So let's restart it and add the piece here. Perfect, and try again. $2565K. 2565K. So as we can see, we are closer to this number than we are to this one. And the actual damage increase is like 54%, let's say. So really is more valuable when the enemy has higher resistances. Cool. Now let's show this column that I hid here. And this is the damage you would deal if you attacked, like if you actually pierced the resistances of the opponent. And how this works is like, as you can see here, this is a formula. It's not based on the second damage I dealt. As you can see, it's really, really close. Well, it's actually the same because we don't know the last three numbers of the actual damage. So it's within tolerance and it's perfectly reasonable to me. So here is like my formula is not based on these numbers. If I remove them, we'll see that they don't change at all. They remain the same. This is just a prediction based on the enemy resistances, my Pierce, and my initial hit damage. And as you can see, it works perfectly fine. The numbers are matching. So we have the formula, and that formula is just basically you take the enemy resistances, you remove the Pierce portion of it, and that's it. And it can go below zero. So in this case, from 15% to like minus 18.6%, something like that. So yeah, I would say pretty straightforward, and to me it makes total sense. So now I created a calculator for you guys to use and check whether you want a crit rate piece or a Pierce piece on your fifth slot. And how this works is the following way. Well, I will just re-equip this guy here and we will test it on a different unit. So let's take, for example, another DPS. Let's take my Hiwa. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's take my Hiwa because she has the crit rate piece because I couldn't find a better one. So basically, let me show also the calculator here. So how this works is here in your stats and enemy stats, those are the places you want to make changes on, and do not touch everything else here, just your stats and the enemy stats. Here we're going to add the values of your stats without the fifth piece. So we're just going to remove it and have a look at what it recommends me, like as a fifth slot here in the ignition weapon. So let's add my crit rate, 49%. Let's leave it like that, it's fine. Crit damage, let's say 75%. It could have been higher, but I think this piece, yeah, this piece really sucks, so it's fine. Okay, and then I have how much Pierce? 15.5%. Okay, and here it's just this 1000 is a random value, it doesn't really matter, it's just to get some values there. And here it's showing me the first row is the one with the crit rate piece, the second one with the Pierce piece. Okay, pretty straightforward. Here it shows the value of Pierce without Pierce, like with the crit rate piece, and with the Pierce piece, obviously just a 40% difference. And here the same, but for the crit rate. Okay, cool. Now here we have the formula we saw in the table before. So this is the damage we do with the Pierce, and that's a non-crit. So in this case, as you can see, the enemy resistances are at 0, so it kind of makes sense, right? As we can see, it's straightforward, additional 15.5% damage or 55.5% damage. Perfect. Here we can see that on a non-crit hit, we have a 34% increase in damage here as compared to this one. Perfect. Then we have the crit damage, which is quite low, but it's fine. And this doesn't have any changes from the two pieces, obviously. Then we have here the crit damage hit already calculated. I've already added the additional 50% crit damage that you have by default. So the value you see here in your stats info is the one you have to add in your stats, but here in the actual damage, I'm already taking into account the additional 50%. So it's going to be an increase of 125% over this damage here. Okay. And then we have the average hit damage. So how much you hit on average. And this is just the crit damage multiplied by the crit rate. And then I will add the non-crit damage multiplied by the remaining like percentage. So taking 100%, subtracting the crit rate, in this case it would be 11%, so we get 89% of 2600, and then we get 11% of 1150. Okay, and that's the value we get. Same with the formula below. So to me that makes total sense, and we can see that there is a slight advantage if I go with Pierce. Perfect. Now we can start and change some values because we know that at 0% resistance is pretty much unrealistic. If we see here, like my Hiwa, which is a mage, and mage already have like pretty low resistances, she has close to 40% magic and close to 20% physical. So let's say 15%. 15%, and we already see it's tilting in favor of Pierce. So the more resistances the enemy has, the more advantageous Pierce is. But already at 0% with my stats, I'm already gaining damage from Pierce. So really no way to go wrong here. If I go like 40% resistances, this is a 60%, 16, sorry, not 60, sorry, 16% increase with the Pierce piece, which is crazy huge. And like the values are this close to the crit rate. Well, I wouldn't call this close, but let's say close because I already have high Pierce. If I had like 0% here, obviously the numbers would be tilting a lot more in favor of Pierce. So it will also depend a lot on how much Pierce you have. Let's say you have a 10% on average. Let's say you have 50% crit rate on average and 100% crit damage. As you can see here, with a 40% resistance enemy, you have 17% more damage. Let's go back to 0. Still, it's better with the Pierce piece. So you can try with your own stats. So please copy my spreadsheet and change your values so you can test it. But let's also check here with some of my other units. Like for example, I already removed the 5th piece from Evankel, so we can already see the values here. And you can see I have 63% crit rate, 100% crit damage, perfect. Pierce, it's at 17%. And here, with these stats, I should go with the Pierce piece, even if the opponent doesn't have any resistances. Okay, cool. So in this formula, as you can see, I already capped the crit rate at 100%. So if you have more than 60%, it will always be 100% crit rate. So as we can see, the value, like the more crit rate you have, the better Pierce gets. But even if you have a low crit rate, which is kind of unrealistic, I would say, but let's say you have 20% crit rate, in this scenario with already 17% Pierce, you would lose 8% damage. But when do you have 20%? One scenario would be if the opponent had like a 40% crit hit resistance piece on slot 4, okay, this would go down to 23%. So in this case, I would deal more damage with the crit rate piece. But who's building crit hit resistance? To be honest, no one. And even if they were, like, there is really little difference. And this is only if the enemy has 0 resistances, which is, again, unrealistic. If we look here at my Evankel, the lowest one is physical at 30%. Let's put 30%. And we can see that the damage is already basically the same, even though you have 23% crit rate, so already decreased by the crit hit resistance. And you also have a lot of Pierce that's tilting more in favor of crit rate. If we go to 0% Pierce, again, additional damage with Pierce. So as you can see, guys, Pierce overall, 99% of the scenarios that are realistic is better. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say. If you have really low crit rate and the enemy is at 0% resistance, you would lose really low damage just by having Pierce, like, and not the crit rate piece. So to me, guys, it's really unrealistic. I would not recommend using the crit rate piece like on anyone, basically. The only exceptions would be units like, let's take Hats, for example. So this guy has skills like his passive that trigger whenever he crits. So sure, it makes sense to have more crit, but as we can see here, is getting increase in crit hit rate by default. Then we look at his crit rate. Okay, he doesn't have gear, I think, at the moment. Yeah, he doesn't have the piece here that will give him a lot more, but still he has 30% plus 18 is already 50%. So it's already higher than this. It's already 50. And as you can see, it's tilting in favor of Pierce. But again, since he gets additional benefits whenever he crits, it could make sense in these cases, like for him, for Shane, and then I don't remember who else is using the crits to do something. But in those cases, it could be fine, but really not much because you would end up overcapping in most scenarios. So I would say to be safe, go with Pierce. It's unlikely that you're going to go wrong. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole content of the video. I hope you guys found it helpful. I will add again this spreadsheet to my, this table to my spreadsheet so that you guys can copy it and use it for your own, like for your own checks if you want to check which piece to build to be precise 100%. But again, as we saw, 99% of the time, Pierce is way better. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.